On the subject of immigration, while there are many complicated issues, please explain your position on two areas. First, do you support the construction of a security fence along the wall of our southern border? And second, would you vote against any immigration bill that allowed for a form of amnesty of illegal immigrants currently in the United States?
Yes and yes. But let me explain, step back a minute and talk about my views on immigration. We're a nation of immigrants, a country that's become great because of our immigration spirit. We are also a nation of laws, and our immigration system is a mess, and we absolutely do need reform. This is another example of where government's not getting the job done. I am for legal immigration. In fact, I think we should encourage it and streamline the process for those who are here in the country legally. We have over 4 million immigrants waiting patiently in line to become law-abiding citizens. I'm against illegal immigration. What does that mean? We need to secure our borders, just like you were mentioning. Something that's talked about all the time, it's time to get serious about it. And I oppose amnesty. Amnesty is not the solution, and it sends the wrong message for those playing by the rules and waiting for citizenship. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Caragiano?
Well, if you hear some people in Washington talk, we don't have a problem with illegal immigrants anymore. They're not coming over in as big a numbers as before. That is true. The reason is, it's better for them to go to places like Chile where the economy is good and they can find jobs. Having a bad economy is no way to solve the problem of illegals coming over our border. The fence, that's a good start. No amnesty, that's also a good start. We keep hearing that the American people in poll after poll want immigration reform. And you get the idea that Republicans are holding it up and all of the rest of the country wants it and they want amnesty. That's not true. If you actually read the polls, you find that people want a solution, but they want border security. And they don't want people coming in unless we ask them in. I wonder how many of you would be willing to give me your home address and tell me you'll leave your doors unlocked so that at any time I can come and go as I please. Got good food, drinks? I'd love to be able to come in and take it free. But there are laws against that. And there should be laws against illegal immigration, and it should be enforced because you have to decide who you want coming into your country. And the other thing is, we only allow a very small percentage of people with degrees, with ideas to start businesses, to create jobs, to do some really good things. We don't let them in. People in Washington are saying, well, those people with third-grade educations who are coming in, they'll start businesses. We can't let those people with master's and doctorate come in because they're dangerous. We need a whole revamp of the immigration system in this country.
Thank you, Mr. Shores.
Yes, and legal immigration, right? We have the distinction, legal and illegal immigration. Legal immigration, I think, is universally that's where we came from. My we're all immigrants that are most likely descended from immigrants. My great-great-grandfather immigrated from Italy. He worked, and my great-grandfather, his son worked at a shoe factory in Weymouth, and then my grandfather was a school teacher, and everyone has their own story. So that's good, and there are laws in place that allow proper legal immigration in the United States. Illegal immigration is exactly what it says. It's not legal. Someone had come into this country and broken our laws. We are a nation of laws. The laws need to be followed. And I believe in we have this, I think it's in vogue now in Washington. Let's just solve every problem and get this big raft of legislation in one foul swoop to solve the problem. I don't agree with that. I believe in a step-by-step approach. I think we secure the border. Defense, I would, there are some questions on whether the effectiveness of that. There's a symbolic aspect too, though putting a wall up and things like that, I think that would need to be considered. But there's various technologies that can be used and enforcement and patrol agents can be increased. There's ways to solve the problem, but we have to secure the border. When you're talking about a path to citizenship, that's fine. If there are illegals in here, perhaps there's no real punishment, but they need to get to the back of the line because there's legal immigrants that have been waiting to get into this country and following the rules. But in any case, it's tough to endorse a sensible path to citizenship when the President of the United States does not enforce the laws. That is a problem. So I think the first thing we do is secure the border. As in a piece of legislation, secure the border. I would vote for a comprehensive securing of the border legislation, but after that, we'd have to see what we can do to solve that problem.
Mark?
There were two components to the question. Let me answer them directly first, and then I'll elaborate a little bit. So, taking them in reverse order, supporting amnesty or not. I do not support amnesty. That's the simple answer. The first act coming into this country is an illegal one, and I don't believe you should be rewarded for that. The second question is supporting a wall or not. This is a tough one. If necessary, a wall can and should be erected. It should be a last resort effort. There are three components really to solving this problem. One of them is border security, and that doesn't necessarily involve a wall. But if you're going to put up a wall, I had an interesting conversation with a rancher in Bisbee, Arizona just the other day on the phone. We're going to go visit this fellow come April. And he suggests that we get a little bit imaginative about this. And first of all, if you're going to put up a wall or not, you have to patrol that border with horses, Item number two is you need to shut off the spigot of benefits and exploitive jobs, right? America is not a country that takes pride in exploiting the misfortune of others. Right? And the third component is, and this goes right to the second one as well, the third component is a well-managed visitor working program, visiting worker program. Now we have a visiting worker program. And believe it or not, we actually have laws that cover all these things I'm talking about. We need to enforce them, but we have a visiting worker program. But, and it needs to be managed such that we track immigrants who will come here on worker visas, just like they do from Europe and around the world. We can track when they arrive, where they are, and when it's time for them to go home or to apply for an extension. The answer to your question, support wall, yes, if necessary, more of a last resort. Support amnesty, no.
Thank you. The next question from Mr. Perini. We'll start with Mr. Cogliano.
Mr. Cogliano, the national debt is approximately $17 trillion. As our next congressman, what would you specifically do to prevent the United States from passing along this massive debt to our children and our grandchildren?
Well, I'd sure like to think that one congressman could make that kind of a difference. Our system simply doesn't allow that. I think the best thing any congressman can do, being one voice among many, and many on both sides of the aisle, unfortunately, don't seem too troubled by $17 trillion in debt. I hear some voices on our side. I hear no voices on the other. So it's a tough problem for one person to do it. The only thing you can do is work as hard as you can and get involved in the budgeting process. The budget the President submitted the other day was $56 billion higher than the last budget. Most of it goes into education and some other areas, typical liberal programs throwing money to make a constituency happy. It calls for cuts to be made. We've heard that one. It does call for taxes to be raised on high net worth individuals. I don't have to worry about that one. So again, it's the same old thing. So one congressman can work hard, can try to work across the aisle, build bridges as much as we can, make the case that this debt is unsustainable. Try to get them to understand math. They were all counting on the economy turning around enough so that we'd get above 3% annual growth, get some inflation, and that would pay down the debt. It's not working. And as long as we're facing Obamacare and other issues that are going on in the government, the economy isn't going to grow at a high enough level to pay down that debt. So sooner or later, they're going to have to face it. And while I can't, as an individual, change it, you can bet that I will work hard and be a voice to make a sensible budget, to make cuts, and to stop this debt problem in America.
Thank you, Mr. Shores.
So, if you read recently, the Congress said, voted to, folks would say, increase the debt. Well, the vote was to suspend the debt limit, excuse me. The vote was to suspend the debt limit. We don't have a debt limit right now for the next year. There's no debt limit. So let's just start there. We have a serious problem right now. Everyone knows, what it is. It's we're passing on this huge amount of debt to our next generation. This is very important. This has to, but we can do this. It's not like, this thing that's going to kill us. We can do this. We can, and what we need to do is a combination of cuts and economic growth. Repeal Obamacare, that threatens the economy. There's no question about that. Repeal, and you can go down the line, repeal unspent stimulus funds, $40 billion. Has it worked? It hasn't. Let's repeal those stimulus funds and get those back into the coffers and go by the budget line by line, expenditure by expenditure. We have 14,000 unused buildings in the United States, structures that have been labeled as excess or underutilized. There's $15 billion right there. We have to cut the budget. Okay, is that gonna pay off the debt? No, it's not gonna pay off the debt. What's gonna pay off the debt is economic prosperity, small business, pull back the regulations, create an economic environment where small business can grow. The National Federation of Independent Businesses, which analyzes small business health in this country, has given Congressman Keating a 0 score. A 0 score. This community is small businesses. This district is small business. What is Congressman Keating doing about that?
Mark? The second component of your question is what can we do to alleviate the future generation, the next generation or two from this debt? And I'm sorry to tell you that the answer is nothing. It's upon us already. So we have to think further into the future about this. Now, let me partially sidestep here, because part of the question was what can one congressman do? So there are we know there are 435 congressmen in the U.S. House of Representatives. I think about half of them are useless. That leaves a little over 200. And I could do the work of any 2 of them. So I can do about 1% of the work of Congress myself. Now, levity aside, it's a simple matter. It really is a simple matter. Every one of us goes home from this evening and in the future, and we look at our revenue and we look at our expenses. Now, sometimes one exceeds the other in a way we wouldn't like. So maybe you borrow from one of your other accounts or you borrow from somebody else. But the next month you don't want to do that again, right? So you adjust. You borrow less and you try to work harder and bring in more. And over the long term, that's what we have to do. We simply have to restructure by limiting our expenses, cutting back on our expenses, and raising, unfortunately, we're going to have to be raising our debt limit in the coming years, right? That doesn't mean we have to raise our debt necessarily. But you do it in a limited fashion, and you have a long-term structured plan, just like you would, of limiting your expenses and slowing down the growth on your debt. I'll leave it at that, and I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
John?
When speaking about the national debt and when you're speaking about reform, Vince mentioned one person can't do it. I actually think one person can do it. When we're talking about the debt, it's just too important not to focus on it. $17 trillion and growing. Every child born today is saddled with $54,000 of individual debt. This reaches the level in our Congress of being reckless. We're talking about generational theft here. I'm a fiscal conservative. I believe in smaller government. I believe in balanced budgets. I believe in lower taxes. I believe in a friendly business environment that will lead to more and better jobs. Out of control spending and debt are burdening us all, and we're, as you all know, in a true financial crisis. We need to look at reforms throughout the federal bureaucracy to deliver services more effectively and reduce the cost of government. So what you need is a government reformer. I am the only person up here who actually has a record as a government reformer. I was the Commissioner of the Department of Industrial Accidents here in Massachusetts for Governor Mitt Romney. I eliminated a 5,000 case backlog when I was in office. I saved the Commonwealth and taxpayers over $1 million a year in outside counsel fees by bringing lawyers inside to do the litigation. I also increased